Folks, that's the Roden Cemetery sign. The location is on a Google map search. And that cemetery is where my ancestors lay in rest after the white male, white supremacist of their time hung them and shot them without a trial, and to steal their vast swaths of land. And I'm arriving at that cemetery right now. Today, June 25th, 2024. A disgrace. A disgrace. They justify it with the Bible. That's what they do. And that's why we call the Alabama officials mafia a cult. It is the Alabama officials mafia cult because they attempt to use the Bible to justify their crimes against humanity. They tried that in the Civil War by saying that in the Bible, God said the slave should respect his master and thereby receive favor. Folks, that's 3,500 plus years ago in Egypt. That's the Old Testament. They're taking that out of context. We go by the New Testament and the restored gospel. We don't go by the Old Testament other than a historic reference. They pick and choose. And when you're advocating violence in the name of God for your financial, social, and political benefit, you're going to want some water in hell, but you can't have everything you want. So here we have it, Benjamin Roden. That is my great-great-grandpa. He was born April 6th, 1795. And he was hung and shot without a trial December 26th, one day after Christmas, 1864. At the bottom of this tombstone say the words, in life beloved, in death lamented. And there is a weeping willow tree at the top of this 1864 tombstone. His wife Kezia, Kezia, also has a weeping willow tree at the top of her tombstone, and she died right at the beginning of the Civil War, 1861. July 20th, 1861, and she was born January 16th, 1798. It says at the bottom of her tombstone, she is not dead, but sleeping. So they put a noose around my great-great-grandpa's neck and hung him, and then they shot him as he hung. And they did this to him to steal his property. And his son, who was about 35 and he was about 65, you can do the math there. His son, my uncle, Portland Roden, was born August 2nd, 1829, and he was hung and shot with his father December 26th, 1864. His need is not home, I think is what that says at the bottom. About 160 years ago, folks, they were killing my family for their land, the white male, white supremacist. Then in 1935, Macon, Georgia, Bibb County, the sheriff ordered my great-grandpa on my father's side murdered on Christmas morning as a present for the sheriff. And there are newspaper articles about it. The sheriff was never held accountable. The deputy that murdered my great-grandpa in Macon, Georgia, committed suicide on the 10th month anniversary of the murder, because he saw the devastation of his crime. My great-grandmother, Eula Blizzard, which means the cold hard truth, well spoken. Eula Blizzard Johnson. She lost her 4 children to Georgia foster care. One was 14, Earl Ray. So he lived with his mother until he could join the military, as he did at age 17. The other 3 children were lost into Georgia foster care because my great-grandmother, Eula Blizzard Johnson, could not afford to feed her children. 1935, in the midst of the Great Depression. And her breadwinner, her husband, had been murdered in her presence and at the front door of their home. He answered the door. A sheriff's deputy had knocked on the door Christmas morning. Eula Blizzard Johnson was cooking Christmas morning breakfast. And my great-grandpa, Samuel Clarence Johnson Sr., a.k.a. Slick, with a cowboy hat on and boots right at 7 feet tall and as thin as a beanpole. He said, "May I help you, deputy?" And the deputy shot him right in the heart on orders of the sheriff. Why? Because Samuel Clarence Johnson Sr., a.k.a. Slick, had gotten into a verbal altercation with the sheriff's daughter. And the sheriff was involved in a moon trafficking operation during the Great Depression, which would be synonymous with methamphetamine trafficking by today's standards. Then you go to 1965, back to Marshall County, and understand that my mother's ancestors, which are mine, Benjamin Roden, along with his son, Portland Roden, along with 4 other uncles and a 19-year-old cousin, all hung and shot without a trial on Buck Island, Marshall County, Alabama, December 26, 1864. That's on my mother's side. And we're German Americans. Roden is German, R-O-D-E-N. Okay, my mother's father's name, her maiden name, is Rogers, and her mother's maiden name was Roden. So then you go to 1965, and another uncle was murdered here in Marshall County during what's called the Lavender Scare. That's David Keith Rogers, August 7th, 1965, Albertville, Alabama. And after his San Ann service and automobile repair station had been devastated by rampant theft, and he shot himself and killed himself. All right, about 60 years later, they do the same to my mother in the automobile business, Marshall County. These are the radical religious zealots, also known as the radical Southern Baptist. And they advocate violence to rape, rob, pillage, slander, steal, kill, destroy, and in God's name. But it's their God. And who is their God? You can do the math there. They emulate Adolf Hitler, Nazi Germany warfare tactics. They dehumanize people with vicious, lethal lies, slander. It's what they did to my uncle, David Keith Rogers. It's what they did to my mother, Eugenia Rogers Johnson Collins. Understand, her first name is Eugenia. Her father's name, his surname was Rogers. Her mother's maiden name was Roden, R-O-D-E-N. Her first marriage of right at 30 years, Johnson, and her second, right at 30 years, Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-G-S. Understand this pattern of violence, white on white violence, all for theft, all for criminality, and by Alabama white male white supremacists that are judges, lawyers, lawmen, bankers, chiropractors, corporate executives like Charter Spectrum Cable. And understand what they did to my mother in 2001 after we had moved to Marshall County and been here only 9 months. They audited her and repeated during that audit. This is just a routine audit. It happens to everyone. It's a routine audit, routine audit, routine audit, routine audit, routine audit. It sounds like it's not a routine audit. They were criminally surveilling us, the officials. They determined our net worth was $5 to $6 million with real estate holdings, accounts receivables, and then they extorted us for $5 million in a frivolous lawsuit. The whole county was involved in it. Tampered jury, crooked judge, crooked lawyers, all of it. When we appealed to the Supreme Court, they held up our license 9 months to 23 finance offices and bankrupted us. Ran off 3,500 customers. Why? They did not want us to have the financial what-with-all. And if you don't know what that means, by today's standards, that's $300,000 to $400,000 in legal defense expenditures to take a case through the Supreme Court of Alabama. It took 10 years for the Supreme Court to rule. They ruled unanimously. A scathing rebuke, Federal Credit Inc. versus Greg Fuller, case number 1051726. It was released April 15th, 2011, and then the county came to kill us again. Our banker, Margaret Lacey, gave away all of our operating capital under the guise of cash and stolen business checks. It's all a conspiracy. Steve Marshall met with us as the district attorney. That's my mother, me, and our office manager, Gay Freeman, approximately 12 times, promising us justice. They convicted the thief, ordered him to pay approximately $3,000 to the county, allowed him to keep $37,000 cash as a reward. No jail time, no restitution. Just give the judge, Timothy Francis Riley, $3,000 for processing the crime by high-level Alabama state agents that then theft targeted my mother it targeted her for death that led to a $300,000 theft. Then the sheriff illegally dismissed that and said, we refuse to cooperate with the county's investigation. The county ordered and or condoned the $300,000 theft. They wanted us sabotaged, placed us under siege after the sheriff was elected and declared the declaration of theft against us. And in direct contempt of United States District Court Judge Anne Marie Carney Axon's federal court mandate, January 27th, 2022, she told Alabama, she told Marshall County, she told Albertville City, she told Cadence Bank of Gunnersville and Liberty Bank of Geraldine and Albertville, Alabama, to, in essence, get their hands off of Eugenia Rogers Johnson Collins, Roger Coit Chappell, a.k.a. Brother Chappell, and Jack Monroe Johnson, a.k.a. J. Monroe Johnson, and they didn't stop because they're criminally and spiritually insane. So we filed again, as Judge Axon instructed us to do, under the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. The first federal civil rights case is 421 CV 519 ACA. 4 is the 4th federal district in Alabama. 21 is the year it was filed, 2021. CV is a civil rights case. 519 is the case number, and ACA is Anne Marie Carney Axon. We then were forced to file again because Judge Mitch Floyd threatened Brother Chappell with jail and ordered him to pay the chiropractic Dr. John Allen Smith that essayed me April 15th, 2019, in the midst of this $1 million prime commercial real property theft scheme put together by the judges, the lawyers, the lawmen, the bankers, the chiropractors, state trooper Brian Roberts of Talladega, that we find out wasn't even a state trooper, but he dressed like one, presented himself as one. He dressed like a plain-clothes state trooper with the badge and the gun, dress pants, leather dress shoes, like wingtip shoes, button down, and a tie. He presented himself as an Alabama state trooper, said his father was a retired Alabama state trooper. He was working in a conspiracy with Marshall County to entrap Miss Eugenia's youngest son, me, J. Monroe Johnson, with narcotics, alcohol, an illegal high-powered firearm. I told him to get that firearm out of my mother's limousine during what we call the Talladega takedown. So the FBI in Huntsville recently said, and this is a female federal agent, she said, now let me get this straight. Figuratively speaking, as a scenario, if someone purchased a $120,000 Cadillac Escalade and their vehicle loan was paid down to, let's say, $8,000 from the $120,000 original loan amount, and the banker then tells the sheriff that this late model Cadillac Escalade is almost paid off, and the banker knows, for example, that this vehicle owner lives alone, has no family, for example, they perceive this person as defenseless. And then they move to entrap this person with felony entrapment exercises, narcotics, DUI, illegal firearms, slander, lethal lies spread in the community to destroy this person's life. And it's all to force this person into a delinquency status on their vehicle loan. I said, you got it. Yet, it's not just a $120,000 late model Cadillac Escalade. It's $1 million war trophy. A prime commercial real property, located at 10745 US 431 South, Albertville, Alabama 35950 USA, about 1 mile south of Gunnersville Super Walmart. And after we've paid $1 million for the property, and after we've paid Marshall County approximately $250,000 in property taxes at $9,000 a year for 24 plus years, we're going on 25 years now, with taxes and fees and license, the county's received $250,000 in property taxes alone. That doesn't include payroll taxes on 23 finance offices, all going through that home office. 3,500 customers. Doesn't include all the sales tax. Doesn't include all the income tax. Doesn't include all the license for 23 finance offices paid to the Alabama Treasury. Doesn't include all that. We're just talking Marshall County real property taxes. We're not talking about personal property taxes. We're not talking about sales tax, income tax, license fees. No. We're just talking about real property taxes to Marshall County only, and only on this property. We owned property in other areas. Decatur, Huntsville, Gadsden, Douglas. We're just talking about this one property. And Marshall County's received $250,000 in property taxes since we've been there. And the banks received over $250,000 in bank loan interest. And we've paid another $125,000 in insurance premium payments to ensure the bank had zero risk in the loan. They want you to be a chattel slave and not know it. They want you working for them at no pay. And then when you're almost debt-free, they move to destroy your life, kill you. This is a targeted killing by the state of Alabama and against the Leonard Skinnard family. And Brother Chappell was the Leonard Skinnard grandpa. And I am the Leonard Skinnard brother. And my brother, Damon Rogers Johnson, is the Leonard Skinnard lead guitarist. And Leonard Skinnard is the greatest Southern rock band of all time, known for iconic classic rock songs like Sweet Home Alabama, that's played at Roll Tide Alabama University football games and during touchdowns and field goals. Now it's played in China at their enormous sporting events, and the Chinese don't even understand the lyrics. They just understand the feel of the music. That's Leonard Skinnard, the greatest Southern rock band of all time, known for lead guitar riffs. And now that Ronnie Van Zant is passed away, the lead lyricist and lead singer, my brother is one of the, if not the most primary band members as the lead guitarist. I understand they have a lead singer, and he is, in essence, is the primary. But my brother is also a primary band member because Leonard Skinnard is known for its lead guitar riffs and its piano, but lead guitar. Free Bird, it's a 12-minute song that features lead guitar. My mother's favorite song is Free Bird. She says you cannot have a free home. I'm sorry, excuse me. She said, we've just had someone pull up here at the cemetery. My mother said her favorite song is Free Bird. And I said, well, most people say Sweet Home Alabama. And she said, well, you can't have a sweet home if you're not free. My mother's not free because of white male, white supremacists killing her family and trying to kill her. They killed her grandpa and 5 of her uncles and a cousin one day after Christmas, December 26th, 1864. And that was her mother's grandfather, Benjamin Roden. And her mother's name is Gladys Roden R-O-D-E-N, Rogers, R-O-G-E-R-S. Then they attacked her husband's, my mother's husband's, great-grandpa in Macon, Georgia. The white male white supremacist murdered him, had him murdered, a sheriff in Macon, Georgia, on Christmas morning as a present to the sheriff. Samuel Clarence Johnson Sr. That's my mother's first husband's great-grandfather. Okay, then they attack the white male white supremacist of the South, my mother's family again, and force her brother, David Keith Rogers, to shoot himself and kill himself August 7th, 1965. The white male white supremacists were not only attacking the African Americans who wanted to vote, they were attacking other white Americans that were advocates of the African American community. Google forced suicide, and understand it's real, and understand that 3 people said to me at least 5 times in the past 3 years, they want you to lose everything and kill yourself. Oh, really? Who sent you to me to say that? Nobody. I just figure that's what they want you to do. No. Somebody told you that. Someone told you to come tell me that. No, they didn't. I just assumed that they want you to lose everything and off yourself, because they're doing that to you. Really. These people, they didn't know that the white male white supremacist of Marshall County did this to my uncle, David Keith Rogers, August 7th, 1965. And now they're doing it to his sister, my mother, and it's to steal her property. They extorted her for $5 million, and it took the Supreme Court of Alabama to stop Alabama from robbing a 100% female-owned finance company. You got to understand, these are religious zealots. And Brother Chappell said, it's radical Islamic terrorism with a Christian twist. Yes, they take Genesis 1:26 out of context. That, in essence, says God made man in his image. He made him in the image of God. Well, they believe God is a white man. They believe Christ Jesus is from Switzerland, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. And that God thereby only made white men most closely in God's image, and then ordered white men to dominate all of God's creation. So these religious lunatics use that. They don't want you to know it, but they use that to rape, rob, pillage, slander, steal, kill, destroy in their God's name. And I say God with a little g because their God with a little g is money, love. Put a hyphen between the 2 words. Money, love. No matter what they say, it's the love of money. And they'll kill you for what you've got.